Well, anyway, um, well, here's something I want to ask you, Derelict.
Dude.
What is your favorite machinima you've made?
I was going to talk about Civil Discord at some point because it's very hard for us to not talk about Civil Discord as we go through the chronology of stuff we've made. But
Oh, it's very hard.
I think in terms of I want to talk about Chewies at some point. And if we were to just take Chewies on its own and talk about what my favorite episode of Chewies is, I think it would have to be the second episode. Um which is I think it was Behind the Memes, an episode I wish I called Flictatorship, because the whole episode was about you being an abusive director behind the scenes on oneself, and I think
And
that episode. Go ahead.
what makes it funny is because it's not true. That's why it's funny.
Yeah, sure, whatever you say. So what I thought that episode was originally going to be a mockumentary in the style of The Office. So anyone who has followed my series Chewies would know that episode 4, The Server, is a parody of The Office in the form of a mockumentary, which is what we were going to do for episode 2. But at the time I was talking to Jazz about it, and Jazz was turning the gears, or at least putting ideas on paper for doing something very similar. And I didn't really want to conflict with his project, so I moved away from the idea of doing a mockumentary and just doing just a normal drama slash comedy. So in terms of the Chewie series on its own, I would say that Chewie's episode 2, Behind the Memes, is my favorite, at least of the Chewies series. In terms of what I think my did you ask me what my favorite Michelin was, or my best?
Your favorite?
My favorite might be Chewie's 2, I think. And
Oh, Chewies too.
yeah, Chewie's 2 just has a
What
really nice
about the
feel
Among
to it.
Us Chewies? I thought that was your favorite.
No, the Chewie's one is good. I think it flows really well, but there's bits and pieces that I probably would have changed going back. And it's a little stilted as well, because I think I lost some of the voice talent for that episode as I was editing it, and there's things I had to work around the lines I had rather than go back to people and have them expand on what they'd given me. So it's fine. Episode 3, Among Them, and that's the third episode of Chewies, which is based off the game Among Us, set in Halo. It's good, but I think in terms of what I wanted from people and what I got, I think Chewie's episode 2, I managed to get in terms of how I saw that episode in my head, episode 2 hit everything I wanted to do. Episode 3 was like, there's bits and pieces that I was unsure about maybe a year or so after I put it out, but, is that the one you like the most?
And no, my favorite machinima you've ever made is Civil Discord.
Civil Discord.
Civil Discord is one of the greatest machinimas of all time
What makes you say that?
because it's one of the
Jesus fucking Christ.
because it's just a great machinima. It has the action scenes. It has the funniness. I'm in it. The truck scene is one of the best uses of the campaign in a machinima.
Well, I'm
And
glad you said that, because that's one thing I tried to. Because keep in mind, Civil Discord was made long before we had MCC. Well, we had MCC, but we didn't have MCC Halo Reach. We didn't have mod tools, and I didn't have access to mod tools on the Xbox 360. And one thing that I like, Civil Discord and Chewie's episode 2 does this really well, where I feel, at least as a director, machinima director, that I get the most out of the campaign, I feel. And that truck scene, I assume you're talking about the one between Blizz and Jazz, yeah?
yeah,
Yeah. So they're talking about infiltrating a furry server, and they're using the cargo truck, I think, from the campaign section on the start of Pillar Bottom, the second last level of Halo Reach. And the funny thing is that, I was so excited to use that truck in a campaign setting because no one else I had seen had done it before. And the funny thing is that when we had MCC, 343 had added a lot of campaign elements into the multiplayer and Forge, and they never actually added that truck either. So it felt still more exclusive to me. Now, mods have made it available since, but that's a scene where the way it turned out matched what was in my head almost identically. And I'll give you a one self fun fact about that scene, and that's that the song playing on the radio in the truck is Dear Mr. Fantasy. I don't know if it's by Cream. I forget the name of the band, but it's a reference to Avengers Endgame because that movie starts on that song. And
Oh,
I I started writing Civil Discord around the time maybe a month or two before Avengers Endgame came out because Affinity War had come out, and I knew in my head that I wanted to make Civil Discord based off of Avengers Infinity War slash Endgame because we had six main characters, five guys and one girl, and I wanted to make it this fragmented story like Infinity War or Endgame, where it's about these different characters all working towards the same end point at the end of the movie. So I think I'd written the first half of Civil Discord. Well, not the first half, because the first half features that reference to Endgame, but I'd written maybe half of the movie all the way up until the third act, bits and pieces before I saw Endgame, and then after I'd watched Endgame in April 2019, I wrote the other half. So anyone who's seen Civil Discord will know that the ending scene where this derelict gets attacked by all these people is obviously based off of Endgame because
I've never
Blizz.
seen that. I've never seen Endgame, so
Okay, well, spoilers.
to me, Civil Discord's completely original.
Well, now you can't watch Endgame because how are you going to tarnish that memory? If you want to keep that memory of Civil Discord being perfect intact, you can never watch Endgame.
It'll always be perfect to me, Derelict.
Just to briefly touch on Endgame, or sorry, Civil Discord. It was a machinima I made in 2019. Not feature length, but 40 minutes when you put two halves together. I only broke it up because my Mac wouldn't handle the whole thing as one file. I had to break it off into two halves. And it was about the Discord that I used to run, which is where I met Flick originally, which was the R being the chief Discord. And because of a certain character who will remain nameless, I had to enforce rules on bullying in the server. And there was a division of members in that server, which we called the Exodus. And the events of Civil Discord are loosely based on the events of that Exodus. And that's where Civil Discord kind of originated from.
It's not a nice
So
place to be back then. There was a lot. It was very scary.
it was very scary, and it's one of those things where I was largely responsible for that because I didn't tighten the belt, I suppose. And
It was like N words everywhere.
which,
N words.
yeah,
N words everywhere all the time.
sure, and obviously that's no longer the case in the newer server with the Johnson JT fans. It's under better leadership, and I'm glad that someone more capable is in charge of it. But Civil Discord was about that event, and I think I watched it recently. I think a month or two ago, all of Civil Discord, and I think it's aged pretty well. I was told that it hadn't aged well, but I think in terms of its technical sense, in terms of how it's edited and it's cut, it does hold up. But it's also it belongs in 2019. I don't think that film could be watched in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. I think that movie should be left in 2019 as a product of 2019. Kind of like Admiralty 3, you know? Um that was my first kind of big project on my channel, which was Abnormality 3, for the audience unaware, was a fan project of John Graham's machinima projects, that being Deus Ex Machina, One Life Remaining, Hard Justice, Arby the Chief, and Abnormality 1 and 2. And what I had done is I'd taken all the main characters from all those movies and put them into one project, like the Avengers as well. And it was very similar to Avengers. I think I based a lot of it off Infinity War because I made that in summer 2018 for John's birthday. So it followed the same kind of release schedule as the RB Retold projects, which I'm sure we'll get to later on. So that's what Abnormality 3 was. And that was a machinima where it was my first proper machinima. All the previous things I made were either screen tests or they were me fucking around on my friend or cousin's console while I held a mobile phone up to the screen like a dipshit. So as Abnormality 3 was my. If you go on my channel, there's going to be the trailer for RB Chief Ash the Ashes, which was filmed by an original member of the first RB server called Toa of Cinema slash Asad Sanghili. But Abnormality 3 was my first project on my channel that was truly my own. And it was my attempt to throw my chops at machinima because I felt like I already knew how a machinima should be made, but I also wanted to make it intentionally shitty looking and punch all the tropes that John had touched on with his guide to machinima, but also what I had seen from a lot of incompetent machinima directors. and I feel like I did that. I think Abnormality 3 still kind of holds up today, not in terms of its quality, but in terms of its humor.
Fun fact: One Self wouldn't exist without Abnormality Free, because that's the video I saw that made me join the server.
So in actuality, I did actually inspire something.
See?
Yeah, it's a that was a really fun fact. Like I had a lot of fun on that fact. Like thanks,
Well,
thank
it's
you.
a fun fact because if Abnormality Free didn't exist, this podcast wouldn't exist.
And I guess in a way, if I didn't exist, you wouldn't exist.
Yeah, that may be more true than you thought. Think.